Hi, Joe.
Hi, Carol.
I always come because I like what you have to say. You're in my database. It's not an email from me.
Well, I love that. Thank you, Carol. I'm excited to hopefully be helpful.
Yes, yes.
We'll give it a minute or two until everybody gets LinkedIn or clicks their email, whatever they do before they join these meetings now.
Great. Yeah, exactly. Sounds good. Yeah, there's a whole procedure there, it looks like.
Oh, and Danny, look, I found out how to put my background on, and it works.
It works. I just found out yesterday they added the new blur feature finally to Zoom. You have to reinstall Zoom in order to do it.
See, Carol, I just assumed that you were in San Francisco right now.
My heart is there. I never grew up there, so my boyfriend lived there for 20 plus years, but no. Of the photos, I thought there was one photo where I was in the middle of grass, and I thought, a lot of green. And then there was another photo that, that Hawaii photo, and I thought, nah, not there yet. So I thought I'd be up there.
Right.
So I've seen a few people in.
Somebody
we'll wait for them, but if you want to
so I apologize.
Started, Joe, I can start off our lunch and learn. So this is Joe Spierer. He's actually local here in the Redondo Beach area, but he's mainly the architect for the Silicon Beach. So I think he covers pretty much everything in the South Bay, probably from Long Beach to the airport, all in that area. So Joe, it's all yours.
All right. Well, I'm going to share my screen here. All right. Can everyone see this?
Yep, we see it there.
Rendering here. Okay. So yes, my name is Joe Spierer Architect, and I have a firm in Redondo Beach. There are 9 of us right now, and we specialize in high-end custom single-family residential architecture. We also do some multifamily and commercial as well, depending on the project. But basically, my experience has to do, mostly with kind of figuring out single-family residences and making sure that they work properly, and making sure that they are they're going to be designed and built correctly, because it's a long process and there can be bumps along the road, and the idea is to prevent as many of those bumps as humanly possible. So I wanted to actually start by showing you guys a new software that we use here. This software allows us to, and you guys can see me moving around, I assume, right? Here. And,
yep, we see it, yeah. The
okay,
3D view.
Yeah, so basically this software allows us to kind of show our clients what the design is going to look like inside of their home. I'm sure you guys are kind of familiar with accessory dwelling units as well. This is an accessory dwelling unit that we've designed on this lot in Manhattan Beach 2. And you can see we have designed the house to kind of work well with the structure in the back. So, and I'm happy to chat about ADUs at some point if you guys want to. So, but I thought this is always kind of a fun thing to show at the beginning, to kind of show kind of the power of what's possible now from a design and presentation perspective. So, kind of fun. All right, so I'm going to re-present my PowerPoint. All right, so basically what I'm here to talk to you guys about today is pre-design, right? So pre-design, there are different phases of architecture, and they all have to do with design and permitting typically. Pre-design is a phase that occurs prior to anything being designed, right? It's called pre-design for a reason. And it usually takes place during, let's say, escrow. So it might take place during your inspection contingency period, right? During that 17 days, figuring out what can and cannot be done on any given piece of property. And there are different types of analyses that need to occur. And Danny, should I be admitting people here, or I see it popping up on my screen?
Yeah, it should not be automatic now. Let's see, I disabled it.
Okay, it says that somebody's waiting here. basically, you know, the idea is what do we need to think about prior to construction taking place, prior to closing escrow, right? And so I'll help you think through some of that today. The first piece of what I'm going to talk about today is price analysis. And price analysis is something that you guys can actually help your clients with and help think through a potential development and what can and can't be done. And it's very simple, and I'll kind of walk you through a quick one here because the site analysis is what I really want to help you with today. But let's start with price analysis. So your client says, I want to build a house, right? They say, I want to build a brand new house. And what I don't want to do is overbuild for the area, right? So, you know, imagine this in, let's say, Old Torrance. You would never be able to get your money out of the lot when you put money in. They want to at least end up with as much equity as they put into the house typically. So, you know, imagine you have a potential tear down. It's $1.4 million for the land purchase. Does it make sense? You find a comp nearby that's 3,300 square feet. That's how much you want to build, and it's sold for 3.8. So construction, from the look of it, and this is something that we can help with here, appears to be, you know, $450 per square foot. Hard costs are probably going to be around 1.5 million. Soft costs, meaning your architect, your engineers, your surveyor, your landscape architect, you know, civil, soils engineer, all of that looks like it's probably about $150,000. So your carrying costs, you know, during that amount of time might be 200. So maybe this is a $2 million project, which looks like once you kind of add all that together, it looks like that there is some equity profit. And that's what people usually want to see when they're doing some sort of development. And that's something that we can help them with, and which you guys can help them with too. So, all right. So now let's talk site analysis, because this is kind of the even more interesting stuff here, because ultimately figuring out what is going to make sense for a particular client is important. And there are always issues with any given property. And having architectural information during that time is something that is an important thing to do. So let's take views, for example. So imagine you have a slope, right? So these contours indicate a pretty steep slope.
I'm going. I'll talk to you later on. I got, I'm in a class. So.
I don't think that was a question. By the way, feel free.
Got him.
By the way, feel free, if you guys have questions, feel free to interrupt me. I am more than happy to take questions during the presentation. So feel free. This is a small enough group where I think it would be a-okay to do that. So. All right, so site analysis. This is a pretty steep slope here. So imagine this is, let's say, the top of the slope, and this is the bottom of the slope. You know, it might make the most sense from an economical standpoint to place the house kind of along the contours, right in the middle of the site. You know, that it's the most economical way to go about it. However, if the view is off in a different direction, then it makes more sense from a view standpoint to put it maybe higher on the site and not necessarily in line with the contours. So that is a very expensive decision to make. And it's not that you shouldn't do it, but you should know what the cost impact of doing that might be, right? So, I mean, what if the predetermined pad, what if there's a house right here, but ultimately you want to build a house right here? What are the cost implications of that? So that's something that we help determine during the pre-design portion of the project. You also have to know where you're putting a house and what things you're going to have to, what obstacles you're going to have to deal with in any particular situation. For example, this is a project that we had in Palos Verdes Estates where you can actually see the project. I'm going to zoom in right here. You can see the flags here. Actually, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but you can see some flags right here. You can see flags kind of coming across here. That's our project right over there. And the view that you're looking from right now is an objecting neighbor's house. This is their porch. So basically, during the process in Palos Verdes Estates, all of the neighbors have the opportunity to stand up, and they have a full 3 minutes to speak, and they get to talk about why you are blocking their view. So this particular neighbor where I'm standing right here, looking at our project, they objected because they said, this is, I think, 4 or 5 streets back. They objected because they said that we are, quote, decimating their view by building this house right here. So, and the Planning Commission hears this. They'll actually sit there and they'll hear this. So kind of, again, knowing what the process is in any given city is an important thing if someone is looking to develop any particular piece of land, add on to their house, add a second story, even just a simple interior remodel may have some of these issues, although not nearly as many as they would otherwise. So
yeah, regarding the flags, we just noticed up there on the Butcher Hill right here on Hawthorne Boulevard, they put the flags up for the new construction that's going there.
right.
That's
Well,
a lot of flags.
a lot of flags, that's right. And anytime you see those flags, you have to know that they're there specifically so that the neighbors can make comment, right? They're there so that the planning commissioners can look and make a determination. Is this going to block someone's view? Is it going to be a privacy issue? Will the windows from up there be looking down into somebody's yard, right? All of those things get factored in to whether something gets approved or not. So then you also from a site analysis standpoint, what are my views going to be like? And it may not be as simple as kind of placing the house and saying, okay, well, this is how we're going to maximize view. I can kind of see it. It might be important to kind of do some diagramming to understand. And this is a very simple hand sketch representation to show you guys what we do, but ours are more hard-lined, and they'll actually go through the actual site and show you what your sight lines are. But basically what we'd be determining is how can we maximize view while preventing some of the noise and preventing some of the other things that maybe we don't want to see. So this is a highly simplified version of a client that approached us who said, look, I think I want to buy this property, but I only want to buy this property if we can block the traffic. I don't want to see the traffic from down below, and I want to make sure I can see the mountains and the water beyond. But I also don't want to hear nearly what I'm hearing right now. And so we did some analysis. It was more complicated than what I'm showing you, but basically to show them, again, this is a simplified version, that yes, if you put a site retaining wall, and yes, if you put proper foliage there, that you are going to be okay. And so they ended up closing on this property, and they were happy that they did. So another situation that might come up, right, for site analysis, for example, this is a house that we did in Manhattan Beach years ago, and this had power lines running, God, it was a foot in front of the property. And they were terrible with the house that was there at that point. The house was a one-story house, and it was just the power lines were kind of swooping back and forth right in front of their windows and everything. So we actually did a section analysis to help determine, where are those power lines going to sit? Are they going to, once we put a second story, is it going to be right in the middle of this view? Or are we going to have the power lines lining up perfectly with the floor plate as they come by, and make it so that we don't have them right in the middle of what we're trying to accomplish here? So, and that's what ended up happening here, is we did that site section, and then as you can see, once we actually designed and created a house there were no power lines there in sight. So it's an important thing to analyze at the beginning. All right, so something else to think about are things that are protected, for example. So let's say, for example, you have protected trees on your lot. One of the things that we often do is we'll show up on a site and we will say, you need an arborist, because we will spot a few, let's say, oak trees. So for example, if you have 3 oak trees on your site that look like this, and you're in a certain overlay where the trees are protected, which lots of areas of Los Angeles are, then these are your only options for where you can build a house, right? This is it. So if you wanted to put something in the middle of the site, it may not happen. Oh, and just to go back on that a little bit, basically there are processes for getting rid of protected trees, but they're long, right? So to get rid of a protected tree in certain areas of Los Angeles, it might be a 9-month process just to get rid of the tree. So you have to tack that on to whatever you're doing for the rest of the plan check. So things to think about that are surprises. And the last thing you want is for your clients to be surprised. And so a little bit of analysis at the beginning can be helpful. Something else to think about.
On the site locations, like if you look at like the Hollywood Hills, places like that, it seems like every house is skewed a different way. So it must be either to benefit the view or some sort of restriction, is my guess.
There are 1,000 reasons why they could have located it in one way or another. You are 100% correct. Often, you say, well, why the hell did they put the house in this spot? It doesn't make any sense until you realize that 6 feet over the soil might be, terrible, or that the neighbor objected to wherever it was, or that you're right, it was going to be $100,000 more to situate it over here than over there, right? It could be a million different things. So another one of the things that it could be the drainage, right? It could be that they located it so that water could go past the house properly. In this case, if you do have kind of a house blocking the water, there are ways to mitigate that, but they're expensive, of course, and you have underground water to contend with too. The last thing you want is for hydrostatic pressure from the underground water to push up on your foundation. And if you go down into some basements, you can see that like white powder on like basement walls. That's water leaking through the basement, and that will eventually cause mold and other damage. And being able to kind of know what type of situation you're going to be dealing with at the beginning is important. So another situation might be, where is your foundation going to be, right? This is probably the most important thing on hillside properties is soil, right? It's almost always soil. What does your soil look like? Where is bedrock? If it's underneath the basement, like I'm showing right here, where your bedrock is right there, kind of holding up the house, not a problem. You have a fairly inexpensive foundation. But if your soil is way down there, then you do have a problem, and you end up having to put these massive caissons or piles underneath the house to hold it up. And these are not inexpensive. We did one that was, we did one on the cliff of Palos Verdes Estates in the on Rocky Point. It's being built right now. $2.5 million straight in the dirt. And they actually hired us for pre-design at the beginning to kind of think through this stuff. And, they accepted it. They said, look, I get it's going to be an expensive foundation, but I don't care. I'm ready to move on. But their attitude would have been different, I think, had they found this out after they owned the house. So knowing this information ahead of time is a good thing.
Do you have any information like on like expansive soil? Since like right here in Torrance, we have a couple of housing tracts that are near our office that have that.
Yeah, well, you have that a lot around here, because and that's why it's kind of important to know what the soil is composed of, right? Is the soil going to be silt? Is it going to be sand? Is it do you have water that's moving through the soil constantly, creating kind of heaving? You have all sorts of issues, and that's why you end up with cracked foundations and all sorts of other problems. But the question really is that cracked foundation indicative of a very difficult potential solution if you want to demolish and build new, or is it going to be something that doesn't much matter? Maybe it's done settling forever, right? And that's something that soils testing can help figure out. So this is that project that I was telling you about. This is on the cliff of Rocky Point. This is a a crane that was used to hoist these. These are 120-foot long steel beams. So that's 12 stories of steel beam that is going to get hoisted up and lowered into 120-foot. Oh, does someone have a question there? No, just noise. Okay, great. And lowered into, Danny, are you able to mute them? Okay, great. Sounds like that's good. Okay, great. And that's going to get lowered into a 12-story hole so that concrete can then fill up that hole around that beam. And that's essentially what a caisson is. So, and this is just a 1-story house that we're designing. You can actually see it under construction if you drive by today. But 1-story house being held up by 12 stories of concrete and steel. And again, $2 million straight into the ground. So it's important stuff to know ahead of time. All right, so also,
so when the hill slides into the ocean, the house will still be standing.
that's exactly right. Well, so that's another interesting point. So another thing that we determined during the escrow period, which was fascinating to me, is the California Coastal Commission doesn't actually let you do anything within 50 feet of the cliff because they want it to be natural. They won't let you shotcrete the side of the cliff at all. They won't let you stabilize the cliff. They want it to slough off into the ocean as it was intended, as God intended. And basically what that means is about 50 feet back was where we had to put our caissons. Right. So and the rate at which my client is losing his land to the ocean is 1 foot per 10 years. So I think he figures by the time it gets back to him, he'll be long gone. But
obviously he wanted to be as close as possible just for the view, right? That was what the placement's for.
Yeah,
he has like a 180 panoramic view.
Oh yeah, no, the view here is outstanding. I mean, being able to kind of see everything from all angles is amazing. So
I'm guessing that's Catalina, right? That we can just barely see in the clouds.
Oh yeah, you're right. You can kind of, well, actually, I don't know if that's what it is. It might be.
It might just be the shadows.
Catalina is out there somewhere. So
yeah.
All right, so height limits, right? So these are some other things that we have to always consider is how high can you go, right? Can you, just because you have it doesn't mean that you can still have it, right? There are certain areas of the South Bay, for example, where the height limits have been decreased over time. And again, depending on where you are, if you're in Manhattan Beach, your height limit is your height limit. That's it. It's in the code. You can get, you can go up to your height limit. But in let's say, for example, Palos Verdes Estates again, for a polar opposite, just because you have a height limit doesn't mean you're going to get it, because the neighbors there's a neighborhood compatibility clause at the city that makes it so that neighbors can have an effect. So, and then, depending on how, and of course, there are many different ways that height limits can be calculated. Like, for example, sometimes it gets calculated based on your slope. So this might be your height limit in one situation. It could also be that it's the 4 corners of the lot, right? So there's another height limit based on that. And then, you'd have to kind of dig down here if you wanted to get any sort of house in this spot. Could also be that it's based on the lowest possible grade. And then of course, we all hope that it's the higher level, but that never happens. It's always something that's more restrictive. So a question that I get a lot is on a variance. What is a variance? Can I get a variance? And the answer is often, unfortunately, no, but I'll explain why here. So basically, a variance is meant to help someone that has an abnormal lot, to have someone that has an abnormal site condition. Has nothing to do with the house. So I often get asked, well, what if I have a house that is built, that's built here, and I just want to add a little bit into my side yard setback. I just want to go a little bit higher than my my height limit just because I want to. The answer is you're never going to get a variance for that, right? A variance, again, is meant for something that's abnormal. For example, these bottom two lots. With the normal setbacks from the front of the house, these two lots can get a decent sized house that is the same as every one of their other neighbors. But as you go down, you can see that this one would require a variance in order to get what the neighbors could get. This is a good candidate for a variance. That's also a good candidate for a variance, right? Because down below here, you can see there's no way that you could get the same type of house on a lot based on the rules that govern all of these lots. So you could get a variance for this particular lot. Again, it is based on the lot, not on the house. And there's that example. So you can kind of see this house got a variance, this house got a variance, and these two did not get a variance up here. So another piece of site analysis, again, is how much can I build? How much can I build, right? Can I build, for example, this is North Redondo in a 50 by 150 lot. This is the absolute most efficient layout that can be created on that particular lot. And, basically part of site analysis is laying it out and figuring out what can you do. So based on the driveway requirements, based on the garage requirements and the backup space requirements, you can get basically a maximum of 2 2,500 square foot homes on a 50 by 150 lot in North Redondo. So this is the type of analysis that can be done here as well. This is an actual analysis, and this is what it actually looks like, which is why I was showing some more simplified drawings for the point of this presentation. But basically, you can see here that on if we're looking to do, let's say, an apartment complex, we might show what size each unit is that you can get. You can see there's no floor plan or anything. It's just simply how much can I get and what will it take to get it on there? What does the parking and the driveway look like? What does it look like from a overall square footage standpoint? And this is so that people can kind of make their financial decisions. We do this all the time behind the gates in Rolling Hills for houses, for example, because they have very complicated rules of what you can and can't do back there. And just because you have a giant lot doesn't mean that you can build more than 1,000 square feet, right? Because ultimately it is based on the pad size, how much flat area you already have. It's based on a number of different factors, access. Danny, how are we doing on time? Do I have another 5-10 minutes or so?
Yeah, you got about 20 minutes. We can do questions, see if there's anything at the end.
Okay, great. All right, so basement, right? Can I do a basement, and is it going to cost me an arm and a leg? And the answer is it might, right? So basically, if let's say it costs $350 per foot to add on grade, to add on the top level, as you go down one story, maybe it's $400 a foot to build down, because again, you have everything that you had up above, but now you have the site retaining and the shoring, and it's more expensive. And then as you go down further, the price per foot might go up. So maybe the first level of basement is $400 a foot, and the second level is $500, right? And as you can see, this is that house this is a Manhattan Beach house right here. So basically, you can kind of see down here, there's no basement because it doesn't make as much sense to add a basement underneath the house. Okay, great. I guess that was the end of the presentation here. All right. So, are there any questions? Are there any questions at this point
I
about?
don't see any in the chat, but I guess back to that one with like the basement. I noticed, at least when you're like walking down near the Strand homes, they're not really basements. They're just kind of set a little bit lower. So either you have to like step down into the first floor. I'm guessing that's so they don't have to build too high. But I'm guessing it's also cheaper because they don't have to dig down as far as well.
There are definitely those reasons. There's also the fact that in Manhattan Beach, you actually have special rules for basement, right? So you actually have, if you have a walkout basement, it will count towards your overall square footage. If it's a partially covered basement, it only counts towards your overall square footage 30%. And if you completely bury it, then it doesn't count at all, right? So you can actually get more square footage depending on how the basement is laid out. But you're 100% correct. Partial basements are less expensive because your shoring and your site retaining costs are lower, right? Further, every foot you go down is a great deal more expensive than the previous foot that you went down, right? So that's why you don't necessarily see a ton of basements all around the South Bay. You see some, but they're usually in areas where it makes more financial sense to put a basement. So
Yeah, I noticed a few in like the older houses in Long Beach and maybe really old Torrance that was maybe like a granary before, so it's not really a basement.
yeah, no, you're right. I mean, that's 100% correct. I think that's right. But well, good. So so what questions do you have? And they can be about anything. We talked about pre-design today, but we can talk about construction. I can answer questions, any burning questions you have about accessory dwelling units.
It's like Amanda threw one in the chat. So it's like, what's the average cost for a site survey or assessment before purchase? Do you have an estimate?
So a site survey is different than what I'm talking about, right? So basically a site survey is where we figure out the corners of the lot, we figure out the contours on the lot. That's actually not us. That would be a surveying company that would come and do that. But we do need that anytime you start construction. That's what we base everything off of, is that site survey. So that's an important piece of information. Those usually, and again, it depends on where you are, right? If you have a site survey in Redondo on a flat lot, or Manhattan Beach on a flat lot, let's say, $2,000 or $3,000 for a site survey is what they would charge. But again, if you're behind the gates and you have a multi-acre lot, it could be $10,000 for a site survey. Now, as far as the pre-design, what it is that we offer, where we're helping you analyze everything and make sure that you can and can't do, it depends, right? So for a simple consult, if it's just a consultation, then it's usually under $500 for however many hours we end up needing. If we're doing a full site analysis where we're creating a diagram and we are trying to understand what the best and highest use for that particular property is, and what can and can't you do, and we're analyzing it from all the different angles we talked about, that ranges. It's usually somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000 for a full on pre-designed package. But there's also everywhere in between, depending on what's required.
I guess would be the best is if they're buying with the intent to redesign it during the inspection period, is contact you then. So you can,
yeah, is to ask, what do I need exactly? Because ultimately, I mean, we can help everyone kind of figure out what's necessary, and usually sometimes just a simple conversation does the trick, right? I've had situations where people have called and I've explained, yeah, absolutely, there's no problem, and I don't even need to do any research. I have other situations where I say, well, this could be a $3 million foundation, and we need to figure out what the next steps are. Or we say, again, it could be you can't build as much square footage as you'd like to. You want to build 5,000 square feet, you can only build 3,500 square feet, and this is why. So yeah, conversation makes sense at the beginning.
Mary had a question in the chat on the EDU and setback rules, I guess, depending on the lot size.
Yeah, so basically the setbacks are 4 feet, right? So if you're building a new ADU in the back and in the rear, I mean, in the back and on the side, you can have a 4-foot setback. Now that is it's usually kind of sharply different than what the rest of the house is required to have. And for an ADU, it is 4 feet. If you have an existing building that's on the property line, then you can convert that to an ADU, and it could be a 0 lot line setback, but only if it's converted. Hopefully that answered the question there. Let's see. I don't know why I can't find the chat. Oh, there it is. Okay, here we go. Okay, great. All right. Does anyone else have any other questions for me?
I don't see any anymore, but we may have you back just to do ADUs, seeing as I know that was supposed to be the talk of 2020 and the pandemic kind of took us all for a ride.
Well, yeah, let me know. I have an entire PowerPoint on ADUs. We talk about everything having to do with them. So we can definitely have that chat if you'd like.
Okay.
Thank you, Joe. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. And feel free, if you'd like to be added to our mailing list. We often give out architectural information. We also have, just show pretty pictures from time to time too. So if you'd like to be added to our mailing list, feel free to send me an email, which is not up on that screen, but I will put it here in the chat, and then I'll look forward to hearing from all of you.
And we'll put it out on the recap email we send with your contact information. That way they can all call you or email you, whatever's easier.
All right, perfect. Thank you all for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely.